The massive space station hung in the emptiness between stars, its many rings rotating slowly around a central hub. This was Harmony Nexus, home of the Galactic Council. For thousands of years, representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered, here to discuss trade, borders, and the occasional admission of new species into their community. Today was different. Today, the Deathworlders were coming. Greg Martinez adjusted his formal uniform collar for the fifth time. The shuttle's interior felt too light, too airy. The artificial gravity was set at approximately 2/3 of Earth standard, and every movement required careful control. Next to him, Lisa Clark reviewed her notes on her tablet, occasionally brushing back a strand of blonde hair that floated with more freedom than it would have on Earth. "Nervous?" Lisa asked without looking up. Greg shrugged. "Just ready to get this over with. 23 years in the Marine Corps didn't prepare me for being an alien diplomatic curiosity." "That's exactly why you're here," Lisa replied. "They're scared of us. Having a military man who doesn't immediately want to conquer them might help." The shuttle pilot, a blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms, turned all 3 of its eyes toward them. "We dock in 5 minutes, humans. The council is assembled." Greg nodded. The Zilari pilot had been professional but distant during their journey from Earth's solar system. Most species they'd encountered so far reacted the same way, with caution verging on fear. As the shuttle docked with a gentle bump, Greg stood carefully, mindful of the lower gravity. A wrong move could send him crashing into the ceiling. Lisa gathered her materials and joined him at the airlock. "Remember," she whispered, "they classify Earth as a Class 5 death world. To them, we're basically monsters who grew up in hell. And yet we're the ones who invented ice cream and golden retrievers," Greg said with a small smile. The airlock cycled open, and they stepped through into a wide, curved corridor. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and ozone. A delegation waited. For them, 4 aliens of different species. The tallest, a slender being with iridescent scales, stepped forward. "I am Thielen, ambassador of the Avari Confederation. Welcome to Harmony Nexus. We will escort you to the council chamber." The translator device at Thielen's throat made the words sound flat and mechanical. As they walked, Greg noticed how the other delegates maintained a careful distance. The hallways were built for beings of many shapes and sizes, but most of the aliens they passed pressed themselves against walls when they saw the humans approaching. "They really are afraid of us," Greg murmured to Lisa. "Our planet has gravity, nearly twice what most council races evolved with, plus dangerous predators, extreme weather, and tectonic activity. From their perspective, we're walking super soldiers," Lisa replied quietly. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with rising tiers of seats surrounding a central speaking platform. Hundreds of different beings filled the seats, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form. Some floated in specialized tanks, while others were merely projected as holograms. "The human representatives may approach," called a voice from above. Greg and Lisa walked to the center platform. The lights felt too bright, the air too thin. Greg took shallow breaths, feeling the eyes of the galaxy upon them. From the highest tier, a large spider-like being leaned forward, its multiple eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "I am High Counselor Zrixel. The Galactic Council recognizes the representatives of Earth classified as a Class 5 death world." A murmur rippled through the assembly at these words. "We thank the Council for this invitation," Lisa said clearly. "We come in peace and friendship, hoping to join your community of worlds." Another voice called out from one of the lower tiers. The last Deathworlders said the same thing. The translator couldn't fully mask the fear in the voice. Zrixel raised 2 of its front legs. "Order, please. Counselor Peeblet, you will have time for questions later." Greg stepped forward. "If I may ask, who are these other Deathworlders you've mentioned?" A hush fell over the chamber. Zrixel's mandibles clicked before it spoke. "The Crodans. They are the only other sapient species to evolve on a Class 5 environment. They joined the Council 300 years ago. The relationship has been challenging." "Challenging?" A small, furry being stood up from its seat. They conquered 2 peaceful worlds before we contained them. Lisa glanced at Greg with concern, before addressing the council again. We assure you, Earth has no imperial ambitions. We simply wish to learn and trade. That is what concerns us, said Zrixel. You claim peace, yet your history shows constant warfare. Your biology is adapted for incredible endurance and damage resistance. Your scientific progress has been extremely rapid. You show all the same markers as the Crodons. Greg cleared his throat. With respect, High Counselor, humans have indeed fought many wars. But we've also created art, music, and literature. We've dedicated ourselves to healing and cooperation. Yes, we evolved on a dangerous world, but that taught us to work together as much as it taught us to fight. A tall, amphibian-like being stood. I am Counselor Nem. Tell us, human, how does your kind handle disagreements? The Crodons resort to ritual combat for even minor disputes. We talk, said Greg simply. Sometimes loudly, sometimes for years. But mostly, we talk. This prompted another wave of murmurs through the chamber. Lisa activated her tablet, projecting images above the platform. Earth's cities, forests, oceans, and people from around the world engaged in daily life. Our world is dangerous, yes, but also beautiful. We've learned to adapt and protect what matters to us. That includes making new friends. She gestured to the assembled council. Zrixel seemed to consider this. The council requires more information before making any decisions regarding Earth's status. We would like to continue these discussions over several sessions. Of course, Lisa agreed. We're happy to answer any questions and provide any information you need. As they were escorted from the chamber, Greg noticed a separate delegation entering through another door. These beings were reptilian with heavy scales and powerful builds. They moved with predatory grace, and their eyes, vertical slits in red-orange faces, locked onto the humans immediately. The Crodon delegation, whispered Thielen. They rarely attend full council sessions. One of the Crodons, larger than the others and wearing elaborate armor, stopped and stared directly at Greg. Its tongue flicked out, tasting the air, before it bared a row of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Tomorrow's session will be more interesting, Thielen said, an unmistakable note of worry in the translated voice. The Crodons have requested to evaluate you themselves. Greg and Lisa exchanged looks as they were led to their quarters. First contact was always expected to be challenging, but being judged alongside an apparently violent species from another death world wasn't in any of their training scenarios. Get some rest, Lisa said as they reached their rooms. I think tomorrow we find out what really happens when 2 Deathworlders enter a council meeting. Greg nodded, watching as the other delegates hurried away, clearly uncomfortable being near humans any longer than necessary. Something tells me they've never seen different approaches to survival before. This could either go very well or very badly. The station's artificial day cycle dimmed, but Greg stood at the viewport in his room for a long time, looking out at the stars and wondering what the next day would bring. Greg woke to the soft chime of the station's morning cycle. The lights in his room gradually brightened to simulate dawn. He sat up, feeling the strange lightness in his limbs from the lower gravity. After 20 years in the military, he was used to waking up in unfamiliar places, but this was something entirely different. He was literally among the stars, the first human military representative to the Galactic Council. He found Lisa already awake in their shared common area, studying. Her tablet. Did you sleep at all? Greg asked, pouring himself a cup of the station's version of coffee. It tasted like a mix of chocolate and cinnamon. A few hours, Lisa said without looking up. I've been reviewing what little we know about the Crodons. It's not encouraging. Greg sat across from her. Tell me. They come from a heavy gravity world like Earth, with even more extreme temperature variations. Their society is hierarchical and combat-oriented. 300 years ago, they achieved faster-than-light travel and immediately conquered 2 nearby systems before the Council contained them. Contained how? Greg asked. The records are unclear. Some kind of technology limitation treaty. The Crotons are allowed to attend council meetings but have restrictions on their military movements. Lisa finally looked up at him. They're essentially what the council fears we might become. A chime sounded from the door. When it slid open, Ambassador Thelon stood there, feathered crest slightly raised. "The council is ready for you," the avian diplomat said. "The Croton ambassador has requested to participate in today's session." Greg and Lisa followed Thelon through the station's curved hallways. Other aliens moved aside quickly when they approached, some even pressing against walls. "Why are they so afraid of us?" Greg asked Thelon. "We haven't threatened anyone." Thelon's translator produced a sound like nervous laughter. "You don't understand what you look like to us. Your endurance, your strength. Most species here evolved in much gentler conditions. The average council member would die after just minutes on your world." The council chamber was arranged differently today. The central platform now held two podiums facing each other. As Greg and Lisa entered, they saw the Croton delegation already waiting. The large reptilian who had stared at Greg yesterday stood at the opposite podium. "That is Ambassador Krakash," Thelon whispered. "Be careful. He is known for provocations." High Counselor Zrixel called the session to order. "Today we continue our evaluation of Earth's potential membership. Ambassador Krakash of the Croton Dominion has requested this special format to address the human representatives directly." Krakash stepped forward. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with powerful muscles visible beneath his scaled skin. His eyes were vertical slits of amber, and when he opened his mouth to speak, he revealed multiple rows of sharp teeth. "So these are the new Deathworlders," Krakash said, his voice deep and rumbling even through the translator. "They look soft to me." Greg felt Lisa tense beside him, but kept his own expression neutral. "We prefer the term humans or earthlings," Greg replied calmly. "And we're pleased to meet representatives from another high-gravity world." Krakash made a sound that the translator didn't catch. "Your world has only 1.2 times standard gravity. Croton Prime has 1.4. Our days are hotter, our nights colder. Our predators are larger." He leaned forward. "What makes you think you deserve to stand among us as equals?" Lisa stepped forward. "Ambassador, we're not here to compete with your species. Earth and Croton Prime may share classification as death worlds, but our civilizations have developed differently. We seek peaceful cooperation with all council species." "Peace," Krakash snorted. "The luxury of the weak. The council fears you because they sense your potential. They fear us because they know our strength." From one of the middle tiers, a small amphibian counselor stood. "Perhaps the human representatives could explain how Earth handles relations with weaker nations or species." Greg nodded. "On Earth, we've learned that cooperation usually benefits everyone more than conquest. Different nations and cultures bring different strengths. We've made many mistakes through our history, but we've learned from them." "Pretty words," Krakash interrupted. "But I wonder if your species has the strength to back them. The Council believes all Deathworlders are the same, that we are dangerous." He slammed a clawed hand on the podium. "And they are right to fear us." Several council members visibly recoiled. Greg noticed how Krakash seemed to enjoy their fear. "With respect, Ambassador," Greg said calmly, "there are different kinds of strength. The ability to destroy is one kind. The ability to build, to heal, to create new possibilities through cooperation, those are other kinds of strength." Krakash laughed, a harsh sound. "You sound like the Softworlders." "I disagree," said a new voice. A blue-skinned counselor rose. "I am Counselor Nem. I find it interesting that two species from similar harsh conditions could develop such different approaches." The session continued for several hours. Lisa presented data about Earth's biodiversity and human cultural development. She explained how humans had learned to channel competitive instincts into sports and how cooperation had been essential to human survival. Throughout her presentation, Krakash made dismissive noises and occasionally interrupted with challenges. When the council called a recess, Greg felt mentally exhausted. He and Lisa were directed to a small chamber where refreshments had been provided. As they were about to enter, a large figure blocked their path. "Human," Krakash said, looking down at Greg. A word in private. Lisa gave Greg a concerned look, but he nodded that it was okay. She went inside while Greg faced the Croton ambassador in the corridor. Your words in there, Krakash said quietly. They are weak. But I sense you are not. Your stance, your eyes. You are a warrior. I served in my planet's military for 20 years, Greg acknowledged. Then why do you speak of peace like the soft-worlders? Krakash stepped closer, looming over Greg. Do you know what the Council did to contain us after we showed our true strength? They threatened to destroy our homeworld with weapons we couldn't match. They forced technology restrictions on us. They treat us like dangerous animals. Greg maintained eye contact. And is that working out well for your people? Krakash's eyes narrowed. You mock me? Not at all. I'm genuinely asking if isolation and restrictions have benefited the Croton people. We maintain our pride, Krakash hissed. Pride is good, Greg said. But my people have a saying, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. The translator struggled with the idiom, but Krakash seemed to understand the meaning. The Council is watching us now, the Croton said, glancing at a nearly invisible security device in the corner. They expect us to fight. Deathworlders always fight when they meet, yes? Greg smiled slightly. We could surprise them. He extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Krakash stared at it for a long moment before reaching out his own clawed hand. When they shook, Greg could feel the immense strength in the Croton's grip. Your species intrigues me, human, Krakash said. Tomorrow the Council plans to test us both. They wish to see how Deathworlders respond to certain situations. We'll be ready, Greg replied. As Krakash walked away, Greg rejoined Lisa in the refreshment room. What was that about? She asked. I think, Greg said slowly, we just had our first genuine diplomatic exchange with the Crotons, and I'm pretty sure the entire Council was watching to see if we'd tear each other apart. And tomorrow they're going to try something more dramatic. Greg looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. This is about more than just Earth. Joining the Council, I think we might be changing how they see Deathworlders altogether. The third day on the Harmony Nexus station began with a message delivered to Greg and Lisa's quarters. They were to report to a different section of the station, away from the main Council chamber. The message mentioned practical evaluations, but gave no further details. I don't like surprises, Greg said as they walked through unfamiliar corridors. The station seemed quieter today, with fewer aliens in the hallways. Krakash warned us they would test us, Lisa reminded him. Whatever happens, we need to show them humans aren't like the Crotons. They arrived at a large doorway where Ambassador Thielen waited, with several other Council representatives, including the blue-skinned Councillor Nem. Standing apart from the group was Krakash with two other Crotons. Welcome, said a tall, silver-skinned alien stepping forward. I am Chief Security Officer Valara. Today's session will involve practical scenarios rather than speeches. Greg noticed how Valara moved with careful precision. Everything about her suggested military training, despite her slender build. What kind of scenarios? Lisa asked. 3 challenges, Valara explained. First, a diplomatic negotiation with a difficult trade partner. Second, a response to an emergency situation. Third, a physical capabilities assessment. Greg caught Krakash's eye. The Croton ambassador seemed amused. He knows what's coming, Greg whispered to Lisa. The Crotons have undergone these evaluations before, Councillor Nem explained, overhearing Greg's comment. Their results were concerning to many Council members. The first test took place in a small conference room. A holographic alien appeared at the table, a bulbous creature with tentacles and multiple eyes. Valara explained it was a simulation of a Vex trader, known throughout the galaxy as stubborn negotiators. The Crotons went first. Their approach was direct and aggressive. When the Vex trader made unreasonable demands, Krakash pounded the table and made thinly veiled threats. The negotiation quickly broke down. When it was the humans' turn, Greg let Lisa take the lead. She asked questions about the Vex homeworld and culture, finding common interests before discussing trade terms. When the negotiation reached a difficult point, Greg suggested a creative compromise. The simulated Vex eventually agreed to terms favorable to both sides. Interesting approach, Valara noted, making entries in her datapad. The second test awaits. They were led to a large chamber designed to simulate a starship's bridge. Valara explained that they would face an emergency scenario requiring quick decisions. The Crotons again went first. When the simulation began, a scenario involving a damaged ship with injured crew, they immediately focused on securing weapons and establishing defensive positions, largely ignoring the injured. When Greg and Lisa faced the same scenario, they took a different approach. Greg organized an evacuation plan while Lisa tended to the simulated injured aliens. They worked together seamlessly, drawing on Greg's military experience and Lisa's scientific knowledge. Most impressive, Counselor Nem said when they finished. You prioritized lives over security concerns. The best security comes from saving lives, Greg replied. The third test was conducted in a large open space with various obstacles and equipment. Valara explained it would measure physical capabilities. The Crotons performed impressively, demonstrating enormous strength and aggressive speed. Krakash himself lifted a weight that Valara mentioned would crush most council species. When Greg and Lisa's turn came, they showed different strengths. Neither could match the Crotons' raw power, but Greg demonstrated remarkable endurance, continuing physical tasks long after the Crotons would have tired. Lisa showed exceptional dexterity and problem-solving, completing complex manual tasks quickly. As they finished, a small, nervous-looking alien approached Valara and whispered urgently in her ear. Valara's expression changed immediately. We have an emergency, she announced. There's been a hull breach in Section 14. Several council members are trapped and life support is failing. The station's lighting shifted to a red emergency mode. A moment later, the artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone stumble. This is not part of the test, Valara said firmly, seeing Greg's suspicious look. This is a real emergency. Counselor, Nem looked terrified. Section 14 houses the council's private chambers. At least 5 senior members were meeting there. What caused the breach? Greg asked. Unknown. Possibly a micrometeorite strike or equipment failure, Valara replied, checking her communications device. Station systems are not responding correctly. The environmental controls are malfunctioning throughout that section. What does that mean exactly? Lisa asked. Krakash stepped forward. It means the gravity, temperature, and atmosphere will be unstable. Most council species would not survive such conditions. He looked at Greg and Lisa. But Deathworlders might. Greg understood immediately. You need us to go in. Valara nodded. The rescue teams cannot reach the section due to the environmental conditions, but species adapted to extreme environments. We'll go, Greg said without hesitation. As will I, Krakash declared. His 2 Croton companions looked less certain. Valara led them quickly through the station. As they got closer to Section 14, Greg could feel the environmental changes. The gravity increased and decreased randomly. The temperature dropped noticeably. Warning signs in multiple languages flashed on walls. Our systems show 5 council members trapped inside, Valara explained, stopping at a sealed doorway. Life support is failing. The inner door is jammed, and communications are down. What are the conditions inside? Lisa asked. Gravity fluctuating between 0.3 and 2.5 standard. Temperature approximately minus 20 degrees Celsius. Atmosphere thinning. Radiation levels elevated due to damaged shielding. Greg looked at Lisa. We can handle that. It's like winter mountaineering on Earth, just with weird gravity. Krakash hissed. Crotons can endure far worse. Valara provided them with emergency equipment, breather masks, communication devices, and basic tools. The station's automated systems have failed in that section. You'll need to manually override the emergency protocols to restore life support. As Valara prepared to open the outer door, Greg noticed one of the Crotons whisper something to Krakash. The ambassador nodded slightly. They're planning something, Greg murmured to Lisa. Keep an eye on them, she whispered back. But our priority is saving those council members. The door slid open, revealing a dark corridor beyond. Cold air rushed out, forming clouds of condensation. In the distance, they could hear the sound of escaping air. The hull breach was still not fully sealed. Good luck, Valara said. The council is watching this operation. What happens next may determine much about how both your species are viewed. Greg stepped through the doorway first, feeling the intense cold hit him like a physical blow. The gravity shifted suddenly, making him stumble against a wall. Behind him, Lisa adjusted her breathing mask and followed. Krakash and one other Krodan entered the section as well. As the door sealed behind them, Greg realized they were now cut off from the rest of the station, deep in a failing section of the Harmony Nexus. The true test had begun. The cold hit Lisa's lungs like a punch even through the breather mask. The corridor ahead was lit only by emergency lights that flickered as power fluctuated throughout the damaged section. Greg moved forward carefully, adjusting to the changing gravity with each step. Life signs? He asked Lisa, who held a small scanner Valara had given them. 4 signals ahead, about 50 meters, Lisa replied, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. 1 is very weak. Krakash pushed past them, his scaled skin seeming less affected by the cold. My people will lead. We are stronger. The second Krodan followed close behind, both moving with confident strides despite the unstable gravity. Let them go first, Greg whispered to Lisa, but watch that second one. He keeps looking at side passages. They moved deeper into the damaged section. The hull breach was partially visible now. An emergency force field flickered over a jagged hole in the outer wall, struggling to maintain pressure. Beyond it, the blackness of space was visible, scattered with distant stars. The council chambers should be through that doorway, Lisa said, pointing to a large sealed door ahead. But it's not opening. Krakash approached the door and examined the control panel. Power failure. We must force it open. He positioned his powerful hands at the seam of the door and began to pull. His muscles bulged under his scaled skin as he strained against the metal. Greg joined him, and together they managed to create a small gap. Even working together, the door was incredibly heavy, especially as the gravity fluctuated higher than Earth normal. I can fit through, Lisa said, moving toward the gap. Be careful, Greg warned. The atmosphere might be worse in there. Lisa slipped through the narrow opening. Moments later, her voice came through their communication devices. I found them. 4 council members, all alive, but one is badly injured. Something heavy fell on him when the gravity went haywire. Greg looked at Krakash. We need to widen this opening to get them out. The Krodan nodded, and they renewed their efforts on the door. With a grinding sound, they managed to force it open wide enough for a person to pass through comfortably. Greg entered the chamber and saw Lisa kneeling beside an elderly alien with grayish skin and a frail body. 3 other council members huddled nearby, all looking terrified. One was the small, furry being who had spoken against humans on the first day, Counselor Peeblet. This is Counselor Shrell, Lisa explained, gesturing to the injured alien. His leg is trapped under that fallen cabinet, and I'm afraid to move it without proper equipment. He's losing fluid rapidly. Greg examined the situation. The cabinet was massive, clearly designed for the lower gravity standard of the station. Under the current fluctuating conditions, it would be extremely heavy. Where is the other Krodan? Greg suddenly asked, looking around. Krakash turned, apparently only now noticing his companion was missing. His eyes narrowed. He should be securing our exit, or he's using this opportunity for something else, Greg said. You stay with Lisa and help the counselors. I'll find him. Greg moved back into the corridor, now noticing how the second Krodan's footprints in the frost forming on the floor led down a side passage. He followed carefully, aware that the gravity could change at any moment. The side passage led to a small room filled with computing equipment. The Krodan stood at a console, frantically working the controls. Looking for something? Greg asked from the doorway. The Krodan spun around, startled. Keeping communications working, he said unconvincingly. Greg stepped into the room. That's interesting, since this looks like a secure data center, not a communications hub. The Crodan's hand moved toward a weapon on his belt. This doesn't concern humans. It does if you're using a rescue mission to steal council secrets, Greg replied, keeping his voice calm. People are dying while you're in here. The gravity suddenly increased and both of them staggered under the pressure. The Crodan recovered first and lunged at Greg, drawing his weapon, a short, curved blade. Greg sidestepped, using the Crodan's momentum against him. Years of military training took over as Greg deflected the blade and delivered a swift strike to the Crodan's throat, careful to avoid the armored scales. The Crodan gasped and stumbled. Greg followed with a precise kick to the back of the alien's knee, bringing him down to the floor. Before the Crodan could recover, Greg pinned him and removed the weapon. Not all Deathworlders solve problems the same way, Greg said, securing the Crodan's hands with a cable tie from his emergency kit. Now let's get back to the people who need help. When Greg returned, dragging the subdued Crodan, he found Krakash and Lisa had made progress. Working together, they had managed to lift the cabinet enough to free Counselor Shrell. What happened? Krakash demanded, seeing his companion bound. He was accessing secure council data, Greg explained. Care to tell me why a rescue mission included data theft? Krakash's eyes narrowed. Our leaders seek information about the technology restrictions placed upon us. This emergency presented an opportunity. People could have died, Greg said firmly. And now they will not, thanks to Deathworlders, Krakash replied. Perhaps the council will see our value now. Lisa interrupted their confrontation. We need to move quickly. Shrell's condition is worsening, and the life support is still failing. Throughout this section, Greg examined the injured counselor. The alien's breathing was shallow, and a thick bluish fluid seeped from his wounded leg. The nearest medical facility is 3 sections away, Counselor Peeblet said, voice trembling. He will never survive. The journey in this condition. Lisa looked at Greg. I studied xenobiology. With the right supplies, I might be able to stabilize him. What do you need? Greg asked. There should be emergency medical kits in this section, and I need to contact our ship in orbit. Dr. Wright might be able to guide me through the procedure. Greg nodded and activated his communication device. To his surprise, it worked. They must be near enough to a functioning relay. Lieutenant Cooper, this is Martinez. We need an emergency link to Dr. Wright on the Horizon Explorer. A voice crackled through. Signal is weak but holding, sir. Patching you through. As Lisa began receiving medical guidance, Greg organized the evacuation. Krakash, despite his companion's actions, proved helpful in moving the injured counselor onto an improvised stretcher. The rescue became more complicated when the emergency force field over the hull breach began to fail. Alarms blared as the atmosphere started venting more rapidly into space. We need to seal that breach before we lose all air, Greg shouted over the noise. Krakash looked at the flickering force field, and then at Greg. I know how to strengthen it, but I need help reaching the controls. They are located there. He pointed to a maintenance tunnel running along the ceiling. Together, Greg and Krakash worked to access the controls, while Lisa continued treating Counselor Shrell. The other counselors watched in amazement as the 2 Deathworlders cooperated, using their physical abilities to reach the difficult location. In my 100 years on the council, Counselor Peeblet said quietly to Lisa, I have never seen a Crodan work alongside another species like this. Lisa smiled briefly as she applied a seal to Shrell's wound. Deathworlders are full of surprises. With the breach temporarily stabilized and Shrell's condition improved enough for transport, they began the difficult journey back to the station's safe areas. Greg led the way, with Krakash bringing up the rear, both of them helping the counselors navigate the treacherous conditions. As they neared the exit, the station shuddered violently. The gravity suddenly increased to nearly 3 times Earth normal, bringing even the Deathworlders to their knees. System failure, a voice called over the emergency channel. Evacuate immediately. Greg looked at the struggling counselors, knowing they wouldn't survive such extreme gravity for more than a few minutes. He locked eyes with Krakash and for the first time, saw something like respect in the Crodan's gaze. Together? Greg asked. Krakash nodded. Together. For once, Deathworlders, united. The crushing gravity made every movement a struggle. Greg could feel his bones straining under the pressure as he fought to stay upright. Beside him, Lisa gasped for breath, her face reddening with effort. Even Krakash, with his powerful reptilian build, moved with obvious difficulty. The council members were in much worse condition. Councillor Shrell had lost consciousness while the others lay flat on the floor, unable to move. "We need to get them out now," Greg said through gritted teeth. "They won't survive this gravity for long." "The exit is still 20 meters away," Krakash replied, pointing down the corridor where the emergency door glowed red in the distance. Greg looked at the injured councillors, then at Lisa. "We carry them." Despite the pain in his muscles, Greg lifted Councillor Shrell while Krakash took two of the smaller councillors. Lisa managed to help Councillor Peeblet, supporting the small alien as they staggered toward the exit. "Captain Rodriguez," Greg called into his communicator. "This is Martinez. We need emergency medical standing by at the Section 14 exit. And if you can boost power to the gravity stabilizers from the Horizon Explorer, now would be good," a female voice responded through static. "Working on it, Greg. Our engineer is interfacing with station systems now." They pushed forward, one painful step at a time. Greg's military training on Earth had included gravity chamber exercises, but nothing like this sustained pressure. His vision began to blur at the edges. "Almost there," Lisa encouraged, her voice strained. The door suddenly slid open ahead of them, revealing Valara and a medical team waiting in protective suits. The security chief's eyes widened at the sight of the two Deathworlders carrying council members through conditions that should have been fatal. As they crossed the threshold, the gravity normalized, causing Greg to stumble forward. Medical personnel rushed to take Councillor Shrell from his arms. "Status report," Valara demanded, helping Lisa to a bench. "All councillors retrieved alive," Greg reported, fighting to catch his breath. "One serious injury, 3 minor. We temporarily stabilized the hull breach, but it won't hold for long." Krakash approached Valara. "The human speaks truth, but he omits that my companion attempted to access council data during the rescue." The Crodan gestured to his bound associate, who glared back defiantly. Valara's expression hardened. "This will be addressed, but for now the council has called an emergency session. Your presence is requested as soon as you are medically cleared." An hour later, after being treated for the effects of extreme gravity exposure, Greg and Lisa entered the council chamber. The mood was different from previous sessions. Many council members stood as they entered, an unexpected sign of respect. High Councillor Zrixel occupied the central position, with Krakash standing to one side. The Crodan nodded slightly to Greg as he approached. "Representatives of Earth," Zrixel began, mandibles clicking. "Today's events have given the council much to consider. The station's recording systems captured everything that occurred in Section 14. Greg glanced at Lisa. They had assumed they were being monitored, but hadn't had time to worry about it during the crisis. The council has witnessed 2 Deathworld species respond to the same emergency situation," Zrixel continued. "One sought to exploit it for advantage. The other risked their lives without hesitation to save council members." Krakash stepped forward. "High Councillor, I must note that I personally assisted in the rescue efforts." "Yes," Zrixel acknowledged. "Your individual actions were commendable, Ambassador Krakash. It is your government's attempted data theft that concerns us." From a seat near the front, a very old alien rose slowly. Its skin was translucent, showing a network of glowing veins beneath. All conversation in the chamber immediately ceased. "Supreme Elder Kazuk wishes to speak," Zrixel announced, mandibles quivering in apparent surprise. "This is most unusual." The ancient being's voice was surprisingly clear. "For 200 years I have observed this council's deliberations. For 300 years before that, I studied the species of our galaxy. Today, I witnessed something I had never expected to see." The chamber was completely silent as the elder continued. "We have misunderstood what makes a species dangerous. We have feared the Deathworlders because they evolved in harsh conditions that made them physically resilient. But physical strength alone is not what defines danger." The elder turned its luminous eyes toward Greg and Lisa. "Humans evolved on a Deathworld, yes, but unlike the Crodans, they developed cooperation as their primary survival strategy. Their physical capabilities serve their compassion, not their aggression. Krakash shifted uncomfortably but did not interrupt. The recordings show that when, faced with extreme conditions, the human named Greg subdued a Croton attempting theft, but did not kill him, though he clearly could have. The human named Lisa used knowledge to heal rather than to harm. When gravity threatened to crush even the Deathworlders, they carried those weaker than themselves to safety. The elder turned to face the entire council. I propose we reconsider our approach to Deathworld species. Perhaps what makes humans different is not that they evolved in less harsh conditions than Crotons, but that they chose a different path, despite those conditions. A young council member rose from one of the lower tiers. I am Junior Counselor Plex. I second the elder's proposal. Furthermore, I move that we extend full council membership to Earth immediately. A wave of murmurs spread through the chamber. Zrixel raised several limbs for order. This is unprecedented, the High Counselor said. But these are unprecedented times. The council will vote. The vote was conducted quickly. When Zrixel announced the result, unanimous approval, Greg felt Lisa grip his arm in excitement. Representatives of Earth, Zrixel declared. The Galactic Council welcomes humanity as full members effective immediately. As the chamber erupted in sounds of approval, Krakash approached Greg and Lisa. It seems I misjudged your species, the Croton said quietly. Perhaps there is more than one way for Deathworlders to earn respect. It's not too late for the Crotons to try our approach, Greg suggested. Cooperation has served humanity well. Perhaps, Krakash said thoughtfully. 300 years of restrictions have not brought my people happiness or progress. Later, as Greg and Lisa prepared to return to the Horizon Explorer to report their success, High Counselor Zrixel requested a private meeting. There is something you should know, the Arachnoid Counselor said when they were alone. The emergency in Section 14 was not entirely accidental. You planned it? Lisa asked, shocked. Not the hull breach or the gravity failure, Zrixel clarified quickly. But we did intend a controlled emergency to test how you would respond. Things went far more dangerously than intended. Greg considered this revelation. You risked council members' lives to test us? The risk was calculated to be minimal, Zrixel replied, mandibles twitching in what might have been embarrassment. We did not anticipate the Croton attempt to steal data or the cascade failure in life support systems. Greg laughed, surprising the High Counselor. On Earth, we have a saying, no plan survives contact with the enemy. Were we your enemy? Zrixel asked, concerned. It's just an expression, Lisa explained quickly. It means real situations rarely go as planned. Indeed, Zrixel agreed. But the outcome has benefited us all. Earth gains council membership, and the council gains a new perspective on Deathworlders. As they left the station aboard their shuttle, Greg looked back at the gleaming rings of Harmony Nexus. Do you think we changed anything? Lisa asked, following his gaze. 2 Deathworlders walked into a council meeting. Greg replied with a smile. And yes, I think we left everyone pretty shaken.